Hello and welcome to the Ashcan Edition on Graphic Policy TV. I'm Brant Lewis, and today we're going to Star City, where Green Arrow is going back to his roots after the events of Ultimate Power. I'm joined by the writer of Green Arrow, as well as the upcoming Ultimate Wolverine series, Chris Condon. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So, as kind of a tradition with my show, I like to ask a couple of warm-up questions to get to know you a bit better.
For sure. Shoot.
So, okay. So, if you were trapped on a deserted island and you could only bring one music album with you, what would it be and why?
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Uh. Oh, jeez. That's a good question. I mean, that's because if you're going to be on a deserted island, you want to have something that you love that you can listen to over and over and over again. I'd probably pick "All Things Must Pass" by George Harrison.
Solid pick. What is Life is just such a perfect song.
Yeah, it's also a 2 LP album, so there's plenty of songs to listen to.
Yeah, I forgot about how long it is. It's like 2 to 3 hours long, isn't it?
I don't know if it's that long. It's probably
1.5.
probably something like that because I imagine it's probably like 45 minutes per side or per. It may be actually. Now that I'm thinking, it may be. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But it's a lengthier album than usual for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, what's an underrated comic that you feel that people have slept on?
I don't. So my answer to that is, it's kind of it makes sense because I'm, doing Wolverine. I wouldn't say that it's a slept on comic, but I would say that it's slept on for this character, even though it's an integral part of the character. I would say that the Marvel Comics Presents story Weapon X by Barry Windsor-Smith is slept on. In terms of, I don't think it's regarded as highly as it should be because I really do feel like it's one of the greatest comics of all time.
I fully agree with that because outside of his great art, his writing is also so solid as well. I forgot what that graphic novel they did. Was it called Monster?
Mm-hmm.
That one is just
Monsters or was it
beautiful.
Monster or Monsters? Either way, but yeah, it was the huge hardcover put out by Fantagraphics. But yeah, he's amazing. It's not it's not the artwork is amazing. Obviously, the storytelling is amazing, but it's also the use of lettering and placement of the letters that is as much a part of the artwork as the artwork itself. It's a really smart book, and it's one of those things that I pour over and pour over and pour over as I'm working on Wolverine.
So, what made you want to pursue a career in comics?
Oh, um, I've just always been doing it. It's hard. I wasn't pursuing a career in comics. I wasn't. I've kind of always been just interested in writing and artwork, and I kind of always have just been doing that. I used to write and draw my own comics back in this. Pardon my dog.
Oh, it's
Uh,
okay.
but I've always been writing and drawing my own comics from when I was a kid. I used to write and draw comic strips, and then I would do longer form superhero books and things like that. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always drawing and writing, and I've got you know. When I was a kid, I went to the FedEx Kinko's and printed out copies of a Titanic book that I wrote and drew. So I've always been doing it. It was never like it was something that like later on like realized. It was just something that I've always kind of done, and it just so happened that this was the best route to tell this story. I didn't even know that, and the story being that Texas Blood. But I didn't even know it at the time. It just sort of happened, and it wound up being the perfect thing. And then now I have a career in comics. It wasn't like I sought it out. It just kind of happened, and it was kind of wonderful because comics have always been there for me, and I've always loved comics, so it kind of was a no brainer. And I just kind of fell into it. It's kind of wonderful.
Most definitely. It's speaking of that tech split, I gotta ask, you're from the north, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm from above the Mason-Dixon line.
Speaking as a southerner and someone who grew close to Texas, what interested in you? What made you want to do a comic set in Texas?
Well, where near Texas are you?
I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, so literally
Okay.
it's a 4 hour drive to Dallas.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I actually I did the drive through Louisiana once down through Texas through Houston and anyway, um, but yeah, I've always been sort of interested in Texas and Western storytelling. You know, not like Western and like the
Mm.
cultural West. But I've always been a kind of obsessed with pulp, new Western, straight old Westerns, Wild West stuff. It's and in a lot of ways, it's our American mythology. Um, I mean, if you grow up as I did, you probably had little, you know, cowboys and stuff to play with when you're growing up. So it was always just there. And then I lived in Los Angeles for 6 years, and when I was there, I befriended a guy named Malcolm Duncan, who's from West Texas, from an area which we ended up basing um, Ambrose County on. And I got to know the real Texas through him. I also have family in Texas, but really, I got to know West Texas through him and his family, and got to spend time in Texas with them, and a lot of the characters, a lot of the mannerisms, and the way they speak is through those friends. Joe Bob, our sheriff in the series, is directly inspired by my friend's dad, whose name is Joe Bob. So, although the difference is that Joe Bob in the comic, his full name is Joseph Robert, whereas the real Joe Bob, his name is just Joe Bob. So that's the difference.
Okay, I just want to ask because I think you do a great job of really capturing that region, the people. It's also fascinating too with having Jacob Phillips do the arch, who is British
Hmm.
as well. So it's like these two non
Yeah.
Southerners tackling that, and that was also my introduction to your work as well, which I love
Right.
that. I love the Infield Massacre too.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it never really even occurred to me that I because it's always a question we get asked. Why Texas? Why? And it's sort of funny because it's like I don't know. I just always I feel like you could tell a story set anywhere, and it's not an issue. But I think that Texas has such an identity that it's sort of you almost sort of assume that if people are writing about it, they have to that they're the people who are from there have a certain ownership of it. And that hasn't been the case for us, and at the same time, we've had a lot of people that really enjoy our work that live in Texas, so we've been really fortunate, and also, I mean, we're not trying to tell a lie about Texas. We're not trying to put a liberal spin on it or anything. We're just trying to tell a story about a place, and that's how people have been reacting to it. Is that we're just we're capturing something that feels real to people, even if we're from I'm from New Jersey, Jake is from England. So I think that if you're a good enough storyteller, which I guess Jake and I are, you can kind of surpass those hurdles at the beginning of you're you're not from a place, but it could still feel accurate.
Most definitely, there's almost a mythological aspect
Oh
to the
yeah,
idea of Texas.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it just sort of goes with the territory. I think that it has that feel, that mythic feel, like you said. I think that in a lot of ways, Texas almost feels like fantasy, just because it's got its own history. The United States as a whole has its own history, but Texas is so vast and huge, and the people talk in a very particular way, and they have their own history that goes back ages. Beyond the white settlers that came in from Spain. Obviously, it goes back and back and back. And in fact, that's something that we could eventually deal with in that Texas blood. We can keep going back and back and back if we wanted to. But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating place, and it does have that mythological fantasy quality to it, just because it feels like anything is possible there. In a in a certain way. It feels like it's a little lawless in some ways still, especially in West Texas where our stories are based. Um, there's, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in West Texas, and you could literally be hanging out for a whole day and not have seen another person, which is kind of an incredible thing, especially for somebody who's from densely populated New Jersey like I am. So it does have that feel of anything can happen, and that's something we try to bring to our stories.
Oh, definitely. So moving on to Green Arrow, which is one of your first big two books, which must be
Mhm.
very excited with that. Talk a little bit about how that came to be.
Well, I like my career in comics. I fell into it. um, I've been really fortunate. I'm a big Green Arrow fan. I remember trading trades back and forth with a friend of mine in high school, and one of those trades was Hard Traveling Heroes. So it was, I mean, it was just always just there for me. I mean, I always loved the Kevin Smith stuff. I was always just I really liked the character. I liked him on JLU as well. In fact, when I write, that's the voice that I hear in my head. But how I got the job was that I just, I was in Ithaca at Ithacon, which is um, Ithaca is a college in upstate New York. Um, and I don't know where you're at right now because I know you said that you're originally from Shreveport, um, but I don't know where you are right now. But if you're not in New York City, in my mind, everything is upstate New York. Everything is upstate. So
I'm still in Louisiana, so I'm way, way down, down,
okay, okay.
downstate.
Okay. But yeah, yeah, so it's upstate New York, and I was there for a convention that's run by students. And it was really cool. Walt Simonson was there,
Oh,
Roger
wow.
Stern. Um, really cool show. I hope I'm able to do it this year as well. Um, but yeah, I went back to my hotel room and I noticed that I had an email from a DC editor named Chris Rosa. I didn't know Chris Rosa. In fact, I was like, "Oh, this is a scam." It's like I don't know. And I looked him up, and he sure enough had credits at DC at Boom, and I unfortunately didn't recognize the name, but I emailed him and said he emailed me. He didn't ask me if I was interested in Green Arrow. What he asked me was that if I was interested in uh, more work from DC Comics, and my immediate answer is yeah, I'd love to. Um, and he asked me if I had any interest in Green Arrow, and I said I love Ollie, and I was thinking in my head, oh, he's probably going to offer me like a short story or a one shot or something like that. Uh, I was thinking like, oh, it'd be a short story in like one of those holiday anthologies or something. And he goes, well, Josh Williamson is leaving. And I go, oh my God, like what? That is crazy. In fact, I didn't really even know how to take it because I had the heroin issue of Hard Traveling Heroes next to me, and just went for a long walk to kind of absorb this news before I even responded because I've always loved Big Two stuff, and I never even really thought I'd be asked to do anything like this. And I got once I kind of absorbed it and talked to my best friend on the phone. I was just like, "This is crazy. I don't know what like what do I do? Like how am I going to do this? Like this is such a big job." I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." And then just yeah, that was it. Really, it was I mean it was luck, but also at the same time it is luck, but there's also you put work out there and the work is good enough that somebody else sees it and they want to you know have you come on board for something like this.
Oh, definitely. And kind of going off of the hard traveling heroes, I think that's always been an interesting thing about Oliver Queen with Green Arrow is that very political aspect. He's a very liberal
Yeah.
superhero while also being super rich as well
At times.
at times.
At times.
So can you talk?
Um,
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
So I was kind of wondering about what's it like bringing Green Arrow back to his roots in a way after the Vits of absolute power.
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, when somebody asks you to take over something like Green Arrow, um, you know, if it's a character that you really love, and I think that you have an idea of that character in your head. And the Green Arrow that I have in my head is not necessarily the same character that Josh Williamson had in his head. Um, and that's not to negate what Josh Williamson was doing. It's great. But, after the events of Absolute Power, where Ollie turned on everybody, he turned heel and, turned on his family, turned on his friends, um, even if it was, all a ploy. But still, he turned on his friends and his family. And I just sort of thought that that was sort of a big deal, you know. And I mean, he could, be forgiven and everybody can say they love him and they forgive him, pat him on the back. But I also don't think that things are that easy. I don't think, even if somebody says they forgive you, but if you've done something that's pretty intense to your relationship, I don't think that it's so easy to get over it immediately. And so that was sort of the idea of, him sort of going on an island, as it were, and separating himself from his friends and family for a bit and going on a solo adventure. Um, and that was kind of the idea behind it, was just sort of bringing it back to that, and then also re-exploring, or at least a little bit more heavily than has been explored recently, um, that leftist streak in him. I think that you mentioned having a lot of money and being a leftist. I do think that, I mean, there's people out there. I mean, one of the I actually had a conversation with Dennis Camp in which I was defending this person, but I was defending George Lucas, who's a billionaire, but he's also a leftist. I mean, if you look at the first Star Wars movie, it's the rebels or the Vietnamese, they're the Viet Cong, and the Empire is America. I mean, it's right there, and I mean, it's even in his actions that he's taken later. He's put a lot of money back into the community. He's built affordable housing. He's built and donated museums. Um, he's been doing a lot of stuff for people, and I think that that's something that Ollie would do. And all you need to do is, have George Lucas and strap a bow and arrow on his back, and you have a green arrow. So not really, but those things do exist. They're not totally incongruous. They can fit together, because I mean, your core beliefs are your core beliefs. His whole thing doesn't necessarily have to be that he wants more money. Um, you know, he can use his money to his advantage.
Oh,
So
definitely. That very much ties in with the first story, Freshwater Kills, which is very much about these murders that are not only affecting Green Arrow on the hero level, but also on the personal aspect of both knowing these people, his own past, reckoning with that, while also with his own beliefs too.
yeah, I mean, it's also, I mean, it's kind of become current events with this recent killing of the CEO of
It
the
has.
healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's I mean, I was just I was thinking that this would be. I mean, there's a real life story that it's sort of based on, which is about the Love Canal disaster, which is in upstate New York. It was an environmental disaster, um, and it didn't wind up with anybody being killed or anything, but when you're writing a superhero or a comic book. In
Hmm.
general, you tend to spice up the elements a little bit. And so that was, I pushed it a little bit further, and I was like, well, if my family was affected by something that somebody did, maybe I would do something about that. So I mean, that's sort of the idea behind it, is this environmental disaster, and companies doing things and getting away with it, and some people not liking that. And yeah, again, it's sort of sort of playing into current events now, which is really kind of fascinating and a little worrisome, in that I'm like, oh no, is DC going to say something now? But they haven't been. The 3 issues have been approved and are being drawn. Well, three and a half, 3 and a quarter, I guess, because it's a short in 17. Um, but yeah, it's I'm working on my fourth issue right now. I'm about to turn it in tomorrow. And yeah, it's crazy writing this, and like while this is happening in the real world. Um, yeah, it's pretty weird, but yeah, it all just, yeah, that liberal streak in him. I think that he, in a way, he could sort of get why this person would feel that way, and it's an interesting place to put a hero.
Oh, definitely. I love that flashback in the issue where very much Ollie is attempting to wipe his hands clean in a way of the dirt of running that company for a bit. Of just like, I only did it for a month. I wasn't fully
Yeah,
in
I
charge.
mean, yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things that I think is interesting about Ollie and his relationship with his company, is that it's like, he may have just worked in it there for a month, but I mean, he had his hands in it,
Hmm.
and that's sort of that plays into him being a billionaire. He's not completely innocent of things. Um, he's just as culpable as anybody else, in a certain light. So it creates a interesting dramatic tension, and that's one of those things that I really love playing with. And I do love playing with the history of characters, and that's one of the things that I was trying to do in that flashback, was play with the history of, or very real comic book history, where in the 4 issue miniseries that Mike Barr wrote and Trevor Von Eden drew in 1983, um, there was a company called Horton Chemical that Ollie ran, as a favor to an old friend, and this was a thing that happened. And so we're just sort of positing that maybe there was something else that this company was up to, that wasn't just creating this alternate fuel that they did in the comic. Um, so yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. It's an interesting. I wouldn't want to, if I didn't have an interesting story to tell with Green Arrow, I don't know if I'd want to tell it. So it's for me, it was looking at what Josh was doing, where he kind of brought it out into this sort of larger world, large family, you know, time hopping, universe hopping, very sci-fi. And we just kind of brought it back down to a very real human level, street level, as people love to say. So,
Oh, definitely with that. And I'd say I'm loving the art so much
mhm. Yeah,
by
Mantos has been great.
Matos. The new costume is fantastic. I love the cape. I love the face mask. Like, oh,
Thank you.
it's so good. Like, it's just, I'm a big fan of hoods and capes. I'm just like, this is fitting me so well.
Well, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, my fingers are crossed that we'll get a toy, but you never know. Uh, that's my hope, with both Wolverine and this. I'm like, please give me a toy. Um, Jacob and I are really trying to get a toy made of Joe Bob, and it's not really happening. But we'd love for that to happen. But it's just, that's part of it. It's just that you want to make something cool. You want to make something that stands the test of time, and doesn't get laughed at. Like you know, Blue Superman or something. It's like you get, you could go the other way with it. Um, but again, as a fan of, I also didn't know we were going to get the chance to redesign the suit until the editor said, like, you know, think about how you want to redesign the suit. And some of the elements were from the editor. He wanted to do certain things. He wanted to have him have this survivalist bow, for example, as opposed to his typical longbow.
Mm.
And that was his contribution to that. And then for me, I wanted to bring it down to almost a cat burglar like sleek suit, no armor. And I loved the idea of it always bugs me in Green Arrow. I love Green Arrow. I love Ollie, but Ollie, come on, you're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows it's you with that goatee and that mustache. It's pretty clear that it's you. So I just felt like if he's gonna have a secret identity, let's actually give him a secret identity. Pull up the. He always has a scarf around his neck too. That's pretty loose. Just pull it
Mm.
up. So that's what we did. And then we really wanted to do something along the lines of that Mike Grell suit, and Mantos just really nailed the vibe and got it. And the cape was really him. He added the cape on as an addition, and it just worked phenomenally well. And yeah, it's just you work with an artist like Montos who has such a strong sense of design and such a skill with the pencil that you don't really have to worry about things. And same thing with the killer. I mean, we get a glimpse of the killer in the short, and we'll get more glimpses later, obviously. But he just did a fantastic job on the killer's design. It took a few rounds with that one, more so than Ollie. But it was, I'm just really stoked with how things are coming along.
Sadly, no hat.
Yeah, sadly, no hat. I know there's people who really want the hat back, but also, I mean, it's like you can't do everything, and I think some things. I am a big fan of trick arrows, right?
Mm.
But I think that in the story that we're telling, you can't exactly have him whip out a boxing glove and shoot it across a room or
Mm.
something. It would look silly. So you kind of have to put your creative hat on and think about how I want to do something like that. Like I want him to have trick arrows, but he can't have something that looks silly. So how do you make that something that feels real, feels more grounded, more street level? And so he came up with alternatives for things like that. And you'll see one of those in issue 2, issue 19, issue 2 of the story. Um, so in issue 19, we introduce one of our trick arrows. I guess also there's the grapple arrow. So there is that we do show. So I mean, I do love the trick arrows. There's going to be a few more throughout the story. Um, but yeah, it's fun getting to play with that kind of stuff, and it's all based on what the character has been and building on the past and trying to put a new and different spin on it. But paying homage to what came before.
Most definitely. I was about to say it's like put a hat on hat, or in this case, a hat on a hood. It doesn't really
Yeah.
work.
Well, I guess we don't know what he has on under the hood.
We
He
don't
could be
know.
wearing
He has the hat.
that.
That's what it is. Okay, so now moving on to Ultimate Wolverine, which I would
Sure.
say was a big surprise to a lot of people because obviously, with the Ultimate Universe coming up to a year, I know that there were rumors and all that new titles, and the fact that you were one of the people announced for with Ultimate Wolverine, along with artist Alessandro Cappucchio, which made me very excited because I'm favorite work, and then they get to see you tackle this character in this new universe.
Yeah.
That must have been, a, I imagine, a bit scary to be asked to do that task with such an iconic character.
um, I mean, a little bit. I was more excited than anything, to be quite honest with you, because as a kid, I was, one of my favorite toys was the Sentinel,
Mm-hmm.
with the feet that shot off, and he had a, you know, rope with a hook on it that you could, and then when you pop the chest open, you can shove Wolverine in there. So I had, that was one of my toys, one of my cherished toys growing up, and I also used to run around in the blue and yellow suit, which had little tiny claws on it. So I was kind of primed for Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of my favorite characters. So and I mean, I think that he's got a certain noirish bent to him, which is something that I kind of am good at. And I'll be honest with you, I was not expecting Wolverine. So it kind of, again, like Green Arrow, I kind of fell into it. Will Moss emailed me. I didn't know Will Moss. Will Moss emailed me and said, "Can you hop on the phone?" And I knew that Will was the editor on Ultimates, the Ultimate Universe. I knew that he was doing Thor, and I knew that he was doing Avengers. And I couldn't imagine that he'd ask me to do Avengers or Thor, since those have writers on them. Um, and I was like, oh, maybe it's a new Ultimate book. But I was like, which one? And I was like, oh, he's probably be Ultimate Daredevil or something. 'Cause that's the one everybody kind of writes me, oh,
Hmm.
he should do Daredevil. He should do, because of the noirish stuff that I tend to write. So I get on the phone with him and he goes, we want to do Ultimate Wolverine. And I'm like, okay, all right. And just even on the phone right then and there, I kind of was already like, I think I kind of know what I want to do. I didn't commit to it at that point just because I was, you're on the phone,
Yeah.
spitballing, and you don't know that that's what you want to do. But again, one of my all-time favorite stories is Weapon X, and so I kind of was like, I kind of think we should just do our spin on that, just do a new spin on it. And then, the idea of doing it set in the Eurasian Republic, which is run by Colossus Magic and Omega Red. The idea of it being set there instead of, in North America, with Department H and Department K and all that. And we were just kind of thinking like, well, it might be fun to do Winter Soldier instead of him being like Weapon X. Like, so he's not Weapon X. He's this different thing here. And that was kind of where the idea came from, and then just kind of ran with it from there. So, like all the other iterations of the characters in the Ultimates universe, maybe except some of the characters in Ultimates. Although I'd say that they still have like flavors of the original characters. But and I was going to say in Ultimate X-Men, where Peach Momoko is really putting her own stamp on things. I wanted this to feel like these were almost, because I'm really working on like Colossus and Magic and that whole universe. I wanted them to feel like shades of those characters, um, but completely different. Like, because I think we all would agree that if there are alternate universes, if there really is, string theory and all that, and we're all just shades of, there's other shades of us where we made different decisions, and some of us are, depending on certain decisions, you might be dead, or you might, be working a different job, or you might be homeless or whatever. In an alternate universe, you're still at your base essence yourself. You're at your core, you're still yourself. So I thought that was kind of important, was to have it feel like Wolverine. I don't think that if you write a Wolverine book that it shouldn't feel like Wolverine. It should feel like it. But it really is just like amped up, um, especially with him as this sort of relentless killing machine, Winter Soldier, who they send in to complete missions that nobody else can do. Um, so yeah, that it was really a joy to write, and to get to put a unique spin on the character. And also, paying homage to what came before. That's an important thing for me, because there's history here with these characters, and I don't think that it's lost on me that people love certain characters certain ways. And I think that if you love the character, as a creator, I think that gives you some freedom, because you understand what people like about them. So I think it gives you the freedom to be able to, differentiate certain things, and put your own unique spin on certain things, and have it feel true.
I agree with that. I would say just overall, it kind of surprised me because I thought Logan was dead due to the Free Comic Day special or the skeleton of the bunker. I'm like, oh,
Right.
there's no Wolverine. But then with that
Yeah.
announcement of it taking place over there, it was like, oh, that's how they're doing this. Which must be exciting to you because you're essentially writing a book from the villain's point of view on that side of the universe.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, so we dive in a little bit. I mean, it's in the solicits for issue two, or maybe it was in issue one. But anyway, it's out there that there's this thing called the opposition, because obviously, when you have absolute power, there's going to be an opposition force. There is always going to be that contrasting viewpoint, no matter what. Even if it is underground, even if it is quiet at certain times, there is going to be an opposition force. And so yeah, this that was sort of the idea, was that we're mostly all from the villain's perspective. And yeah, I mean, Wolverine is Winter Soldier. He is a villain, so don't expect a nice guy. And that's all I can say. I don't want to ruin anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I will also say, made me happy seeing preview art of Nightcrawler and Mystique. I thought
Yeah,
I'm a huge X Men fan. Funny enough, I'm using my New Mutants omnibus as a prop for my laptop with this. Like, I'm very excited to see about kind of your spin with
yeah.
that universe.
I Again, I think if you love these characters, um, I think that gives you a lot of leeway with them. Um, and that's I do. I love these characters, and I want to do them proud. But also put again, put our own spin on it, do things differently, and just I hope people connect with him the way that I did, and the way that we all feel about it. At the Ultimates office. Um, it's really fun to get to write a character like Nightcrawler. I mean, it's in the trailer. Um, the scene where he's sort of bamfing around, and that was really fun to write, and it was really fun to see Alessandro handle it, because he's amazing. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you do a book like this, and you're really only as good as your collaborators. And I'd say the same thing for Mantos on Green Arrow. Um, you really, if you don't have a good collaborator, it's sort of, you're walking on one leg. And I'm really blessed to have Alessandro, because I don't know if, I mean, and this is no shade to Montos, but Alessandro and I have about the same connection that I have with Jacob Phillips. We just kind of get each other. And what I put on the page, he just delivers and then some. He just really has a knack for it, and really gets the emotion of scenes, and the intensity of certain scenes, and it's really incredible. It's hard for me to, because I'm a fan, and I write the scripts, and I'm looking at the pages coming in, and I'm like, this is so cool. But I have no idea how people are going to react to it, because you never know, right? I mean, it's you could write something you think is the best thing in the world, and fans will reject it. So you never know, and I truly hope that people know that we're trying our damnedest to give them a cool book, one that they hopefully will talk about. And hopefully it will be the ultimate Wolverine book. You know what I mean? Which is, the name is, they say it's ultimate because it's the universe, but I really think that, you would be remiss if you didn't try to make it the best damn Wolverine book that you could.
Oh yeah, and I think having Alessandro as the artist is such an amazing pull because I loved his work with Jed McKay on Moon Knight, so I'm very excited to see
Oh,
about how he's going to be doing
absolutely.
Wolverine
Absolutely.
in that
And I mean, I love
action.
Jet. Jet's great. So, I mean, it's, I feel bad that I stole Alessandro, but not really. Elon also. I was just really lucky to inherit him. But I think that, it's, I mean, that's the great thing about comics, right? Is that you find creators that you love, and you get to follow their careers. Um, and, it's crazy to me that people are doing that with me to a certain extent. I still feel like I'm a little bit of a wild card. A lot of people are just sort of discovering me or don't even really know who I am, but they know Alessandro. And I mean, I'm the kind of person who I follow certain artists. There's certain artists that I love. I mean, I follow writers as well, but I mostly follow artists. That's my favorite thing to look at is the art. It's obviously it's a visual medium. You need great artists, and I love unique artwork. I mean, you mentioned New Mutants. I think that the Bill Sienkiewicz stuff is like some of my
It's-
favorite stuff of all time. And I mean, I even recently, I forget exactly on what book it was, but I sent over a reference for the Demon Bear cover. And I was like, maybe we should do something like this. Um, it wasn't for Wolverine, so don't get too excited.
oh no.
But no, it was, it's that kind of stuff is what I love, and I'm so proud to be a part of Alessandro's legacy now. I
Mhm.
mean, what again? However, people feel about it, I'm proud. Um, I stand by the work, and I think that he feels strongly about it too. I think that we're both really lucky to have found each other.
Oh, definitely. So I do have to ask because I think the other fascinating thing is the fact that the Ultimate Universe is approaching a year. You're entering that time period. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like to join the ship when it's already sailing?
It's you're just sort of grabbing onto the bumper of the car. It's just driving away, and you're on a skateboard, and you're just trying to stay on for dear life. Um, no, I didn't. It's hard to describe because what Dennis is doing is this huge sprawling book with all these heroes and all this huge stuff happening, and he's doing an adventures book. It's got to be big.
Mhm.
Um, I'm doing a Wolverine book, and there's only one person in that title, so it was really important to me to tell a story about him. Um, to tell a smaller story. I mean, there's still big stuff, but I'm not really so concerned with what's happening out there because what I'm concerned with is just the Eurasian Republic and specifically what's happening with our Winter Soldier, Wolverine. And that's kind of what is important to me. So it's cool to be a part of the Ultimate Universe, but I'm really focused on what we're doing. Obviously, I'm paying attention to what's happening elsewhere.
Mhm.
But and Dennis and I have conversations about who we're using and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Certain characters and all that. So, but at the end of the day, like I said, I'm just sort of focused on a smaller cast, a
Mhm.
smaller stakes in a lot of ways. Um, so it's I mean it's if I was doing something that was playing into what the maker really was doing and like all that kind of stuff, which is what Dennis is doing, and Hickman to a certain extent. Um, and I mean, if I was doing that, I mean, it might be a different story. But
Mhm.
what I'm doing is, it's a single character. I want to focus on that character, and you know, so it's a little different, I think.
Oh, definitely. It also must be nice as well because unlike working within the regular 616 universe or even the main DC universe, it's a pretty kind of like island that you're working on, essentially, that you don't really need to worry as much about the larger, huge ramifications.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of wonderful, right? I mean, you kind of get to put your stamp on things. You don't really have to worry about Marvel going, "Oh, you can't use this character because they're here right now," or "You can't use this character because they're here right now." Because chances are you're introducing the character for the first time.
Exactly.
So it's really fun to have that freedom, and it really does feel like freedom in a lot of ways. In fact, I think I haven't heard that it's been approved yet, but if my fourth issue is approved, it's a pretty wild story. And it's pretty wild in a lot of ways. I think that it's a book that I don't think Marvel would usually publish. Um, they might have 30 years ago, but I don't think that they would today. And I think that it's the freedom that I feel that I felt strong enough about it that I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. And I didn't feel two ways about it when I sent it in. In fact, I felt excited about it. So I think, and that's something that you only get with trust and freedom, and that's something that I get from Will Moss, my editor, and from Marvel at large. So, well, I'm really lucky to be in this situation where I'm, playing with characters and in a universe that's fresh and new, as you said. So,
I love to hear it. So, why should people be excited about Ultimate Wolverine? Why should they pre-order issue 1?
well, I mean, Wolverine is the best there is at what he does, and what he does is very nice. And I think that if you know that, like I said, he's the Winter Soldier in this universe, and he's a villain, I think you know that what he's going to do isn't very nice. And if you're a fan of the Berserker, if you're a fan of the Wild Wolverine, I think you're going to enjoy this book. The first issue in particular is just a non-stop action-packed thrill ride. It just starts and doesn't stop. Um, it's couched by an opening and a closing, but it's just nonstop, and that's how I felt about. That's how I feel like it had to be um, to establish who this character is in this universe, and it's incredibly exciting for me as a Wolverine fan to get to do this with this character and get to pay homage to the character, but get to again put our own spin on it. And I think if people want to see something wild, different, um, violent, brutal, but also fun, you're going to want to check out Ultimate Wolverine #1 and #2 for that matter. I think #2 is also fantastic. It's a couple pages shorter. Not my call, but but I think that we're creating a really cool book. So
One thing about the costume before we start wrapping things up, I do really find that interesting, the addition of the muzzle, because it's very much tied into that animalistic nature of the character, the fact that he's
yeah,
basically a wild animal that they set loose.
yeah. I mean, I'm a really big fan of the film Silence of the Lambs,
Mm-hmm.
and I just love the idea that they have to put him, you know, the muzzle on Hannibal Lecter because he
Mm-hmm.
might eat somebody. And I really just wanted to bring that into this because it's like how do you establish that this guy is just a effed up guy, outside of the fact that he's got knives in his hands.
Yeah.
Um, it's just even if his hands are pinned down, you can't have him, out and about. You can't trust him, so they have to put a muzzle on him. I just thought it was I really want him. I think that there's an inherent horror element to Wolverine, and that was something that I wanted to push as well. I think that he's kind of a scary character in a lot of ways. A tragic character in a lot of ways, but a scary
Tragic.
character.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because his whole backstory is that body horror aspect, the fact that he was experimented on. He had metal implanted into him, and kind of go back to the Weapon X story. That's kind of an interesting call
Yeah,
back to that because it has that iconic, basically, metal. It's not underwear, but it's like the metal suit, the metal pants with the visor and all that.
yeah,
Too the
yeah,
fact
with the
that it's
helmet.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and that was sort of that was where we kind of wanted to go with just covering his humanity up, as much as we could. Um, and yeah, I love the idea of the body horror stuff and Weapon X, and I mean there's stuff in Wolverine that's sort of horror ish from time to time. I mean, he fights vampires in the
Yeah.
second volume of Wolverine and all, and then even in the Ben Percy, so it's
Hmm.
there. But this isn't, we don't play with this sort of almost more kitschy stuff where it's like vampires and all that. This is all very grounded, visceral fear of death, um, and your body changing and your body doing things that you don't want it to do, and that's terrifying. And I thought that that was something that we could play with Wolverine.
Oh yeah,
So
very much the idea of bodily autonomy, sentience. It's also in a way he's
absolutely,
kind of like a bit like the Terminator, where he is that
absolutely,
unkillable machine.
yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and that's something we wanted to drive home with this version of the character.
Sounds like a fun book. Cannot wait to read it. It's it sounds like a good time. Maybe not good time for the other people in Wolverine, but I think people will enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, just as a fan, I really have to stress that I've just, as a fan, um, even just, coming up with some of these ideas, I just kind of sit back and I'm like, if they let me do this, this is going to be really crazy. And then they let me do it, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be crazy. So I'm just like, I'm just so excited that, I'm getting to do the things that I'm getting to do. And just really, pushing it to its extremes. Um, and I think you couldn't have a Wolverine book like this in 616. Um, just for so many reasons. I mean, they wouldn't let you do it for one. I mean, there's just there's a lot riding on Wolverine, right? Um, but when you're doing another universe, a different version, it's like all of a sudden you're kind of given a runway that you can use, and that's we're really fortunate to be able to do that. And again, just I'm super fortunate that I have somebody like Alessandro Cappucchio bringing it to life.
Okay, so wrapping things up, Chris, how can people support your work? How can they follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
Well, the best way that they can support my work is by buying our books. So I definitely recommend people pick up volumes 1 to 3, or at least one of them, of that Texas Blood, and the Enfield Gang Massacre. The Enfield Gang Massacre, I definitely stress that they should probably pick it up in physical format, because it is printed on newsprint paper. It is very much a part of the experience of the book is to read it in physical form. If you're reading it digitally, you're kind of missing out on one of um, the atmosphere of the book itself. So I would really stress, people pick up our book, and especially our newer books. I'm saying us because of my collaborators. Green Arrow, issue 18 is out. That's the first full issue of Mantos and my story arc, Freshwater Kills. Started in issue 17. I mean, they're probably available at your local comic shop still, whether they're in back issues yet or they're still on the shelf. I mean, you can check it out. But yeah, definitely pick up Ultimate Universe 1 year in next week, which has a 3-page preview prologue, which introduces Ultimate Wolverine. And Dennis Camp wrote a fantastic issue outside of that. So definitely pick up our books. I mean, that's really the best way to support people. It's not following us on social media. I feel like that's sort of that's the way that people think about it now is like, oh, I got to support means following on social media. And I mean, it's like great to have a follow, but I sort of curtail a lot of my social media use. I'm really only on Blue Sky now, and I'm on and then I just on Patreon. And I'd really be happy to not be on Blue Sky either, just because I feel like it's sort of a distraction in a lot of ways from the work. And I do think that that's what matters is the work, and it's not the jokes that you tell on Twitter. I mean, it's fun to see people interacting and having fun, but for me, it's the work that matters, and that's the thing that's going to stand the test of time. People aren't going to be reading your tweets 50, 75 years from now. They might be reading your books if you're lucky. So really hope people pick up the work and enjoy it. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm on Blue Sky at Chris Condon Blue Sky or whatever it is, and then patreon.com/Condon Phillips. It's a mutual Patreon between Jacob Phillips and myself, and we start out at $1. You can join for free, and we do sometimes have free content, but paid content starts at $1. There's a Patreon exclusive podcast that I do every month. My last guest was Joey Esposito, who's writing a book called The Pedestrian, which is fantastic. Very weird book, but I love it. And I've had everybody from Sean Phillips to Rich Dueck to Tate Bromble, who I know that you just talked with. If I'm not mistaken, you talked with Tate Bromble
I
recently,
did.
and he's great.
Yeah, I know. Nicest guy.
He's one of my great friends. We talk every day. Me and Julio Anta and Tate Bromble. But yeah, so the Patreon's there, patreon.com/Condon Phillips. Again, you can sign up for free. You don't have to pay us anything. But that is a way to support us as well. Jacob and I, we make a little bit of money every month from our Patreon, and it goes a long way. So because we get that, we're able to, live and do this and not have to work 2 to 3 jobs and then
Yes.
also do this. So, every little bit counts.
Love to hear it. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This really was a pleasure. It was great to talk with you. I feel like I've done a better job pitching the books here than I have the entire time I've been talking about them. I don't know why, but you're a really welcoming personality, and I thank you.
I appreciate it.